Hello everyone, my name is Lauren Donker and I am the History Museum interpreter here at the Museum of Ontario Archaeology, and today I wanted to talk about the Jacob Bechtel Archaeological Site. So the site is a 19th century Euro-Canadian site located in Cambridge, which was visible initially at the end of an agricultural field as a small and compact scatter of Euro-Canadian artifacts. The surface scatter then encouraged a field assessment by pedestrian survey, which then turned into excavations. So excavations revealed 21 features. The largest feature in the settlement pattern was we're trying to reconnect there. So 660 centimeters by 640 centimeters, which is roughly 20 feet or 21 feet by just less than 20 feet. A well was also noted, but wasn't entirely excavated as it became rather dangerous to do so because there was large gaps in the fill of the well. So normally I would begin by providing a brief history of the land. In my other talks I discuss it because I think it's important to provide a little context to the artifacts I show you. But the land use history of this site is a little less clear. So the land use history of a site is something that comes from the archaeological report. The archaeological report details the research done before and during excavations, the entire process of excavation, and the finds. Archaeologists retrieved the land use history from archives. However, the occupants of this site seem to be largely unknown. It is difficult to determine who may have occupied this property, as not all the years are available for the census and assessment rolls. And a large gap exists, especially between 1824 and during the 1840s. So the early 19th century nominal census between 1824 and 1840 did list a Jacob Bechtel Jr. as a single man who resided in Waterloo Township, but no address was. My connection is not good today. So I'll just jump right in. So the first artifact I have to show you is a lamp burner, and this is related to kerosene lamps. I'm not actually going to take it out of the bag because it is falling apart a little bit. As you can see, so it would have sat this way, and then these are where the glass would have been held, and it actually still has this little round part. Is actually the burner control, I guess. So you turn it up if you want a bigger flame and more light, and then you turn it down when you don't need it as much and want to use a little less fuel. The site had a lot of lamp chimney glass, likely from these household kerosene lamps as well. We're reconnecting again. So oil lamps had been used for thousands of years, but they had their faults. They were not efficient and they didn't produce a whole lot of light, as well as oil could not be stored for a very long time, because it would spoil. But in 1846, Abraham Gesner first produced kerosene by distilling. At first, kerosene was too expensive, but then it was found that it could be extracted from petroleum, and its price lowered and became affordable. They grew greatly in popularity. 7 brass fragments from a kerosene lamp burner are also present on the site. In the 19th century, kerosene was a safe and inexpensive fuel that made good lighting, and it was easily available to the general public. So by the mid-1860s, kerosene lamps were in widespread use and continued in popularity even after the introduction of the incandescent light bulb in the 1880s. The next group of artifacts here, I have some buttons. So a total of 90 button or button fragments representing a total of 88 buttons are present within the assemblage. Buttons can be used as a useful dating tool, especially on 19th century sites. I talk about dating using artifacts a little bit more in another talk, the Haley's Pond talk, specifically how the physical and or chemical properties of objects recovered from a site can be determined and used to confirm the period of a site, sometimes by comparison with similar artifacts from other dated sites. Archaeologists can look at manufacturing technique, shape, color, and decoration in order to fit assemblages into chronologies. So buttons at this time were being manufactured using a variety of materials, including bone, shell, or pearl, glass, and various types of metal. I have a metal button. This metal button is cuprous, and has a floral design on the front, which might not be totally visible. And you can see this is the piece that was used to attach it, which was just on the back here. You can see the mark where it broke off. But yeah, so it's got a little floral pattern on the front there I'm trying to make visible. Bone buttons, which I have here as well, were popular until the latter part of the 19th century. They were made of the shin bones of various types of animals and were intended primarily for men's undergarments, which is this one. It's undecorated. It's just a plain 4-hole button. Shell buttons were common in the first half of the 19th century and were worn mostly on shirts and blouses, with larger ones used for waistcoats, frocks, and full-length coats, which is what I have here. So you can see this one is quite large, so this was probably on a coat, and it's quite shiny. Glass buttons were first introduced in the 1840s and were used on men's shirts, women's dresses, and on children's clothing, while metal buttons were commonly found on coats, shirts, waistcoats, sleeves, leggings, dresses, and boots throughout the 19th century. Other items found in the clothing class of artifacts include 2 cuprous shoe heel fragments, and as well as some leather shoe fragments. I also have some shoe eyelet fragments, which are these little guys right here. So eyelets are the holes in a shoe through which shoelaces are threaded, so you can tighten your shoes. From the medicine classification, I have a reconstructed bottle here. So this bottle once contained, you can see, almost make out the words, Dr. Bosky's German syrup. Embossed on the front are the words Dr. A. Bosky, Dr. A. Bosky's German syrup, and on the 2 side panels, this has proprietor, and this has, which is probably going to be upside down, oh no, LM Green. So LM Green, it stands for Louis M. Green, who was born in 1818, and in 1842, while working as a butcher and living with his wife, Ellen, in New Jersey, he basically bought this from his father. So the couple had a son named George Gill. George attended the University of Pennsylvania Medical School for 2 years before leaving in 1864, and this is before he actually graduated. In 1867, he started a wholesale drug business in Baltimore, but his factory was destroyed by a fire, unfortunately. In the 1870s, bought the rights to both Dr. A. Bosky's German syrup, which is the one I have here, and Green's August flour from his father, who had been selling the elixirs under his own name. George created a marketing campaign involving mass mailings of free samples, and eventually he did end up becoming a millionaire. In 1880, he built Woodbury's Opera House, and in 1898, he built the Castle Green in Pasadena, California, as an annex to his Hotel Green, which is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. So Bosky's German syrup was a common remedy for colds, for coughs, colds, and consumption was most popular for its claim to cure any disease of the throat and lungs. Like so many miracle cures of the time, however, Bosky's eventually became known as a quack medicine, as it was found to contain both morphine and hydrocyanic acid. It often did more harm than good. There's an excerpt from a medical journal published in 1883 that explains the extent of the harm it could actually cause. So a doctor reported that he was called to a home because a baby was sick. I believe it was, the baby was about 3 weeks old, if I remember correctly. The mother reported that he was dying and obviously called for the doctor. The doctor asked if she had given him anything prior to his visit to try and calm him, and she reported that she had given him this, a cup of 3 to 4 drops of the syrup for a slight cold that he'd had a day or two prior to becoming quite ill. The doctor then immediately recognized his symptoms, and this was opium poisoning from this medicine, and unfortunately the child actually ended up passing a few hours later. Luckily, George Gill Green's business then declined after the passage of the Pure Food and Drug Act in 1906, and by 1916 his products were discontinued for obvious reasons. One of the biggest artifacts I have here, so moving on, is this chamber pot, which I'm unfortunately not going to take out of the bag because it is. So this has been reconstructed, and you can see where some of the pieces are fragmented. Got its handle here. So this is a factory-made slip-decorated yellowware chamber pot, which has been partially reconstructed, as I said, and it's about 75% complete. So yellowware vessels have a yellow-colored ironstone body with a clear glaze. Most frequently, yellowware is in the form of bowls, pitchers, and other kitchenware vessels. Tableware ceramics are the ceramics used for serving and eating meals. Reconnecting again, sorry. So tableware was used at the table. It was the fancier stuff because this is what you were eating off of, and when you had guests over, this is what they were seeing. Whereas kitchenware ceramics were more the utilitarian type, and this is what most yellowware stuff is. It's this kitchenware, less showy stuff, so it makes sense that a chamber pot would be made of this because it was less expensive and it was also more durable. The next artifact I have here, I'll show you. This is the pipe bowl of a clay pipe. So this was actually found in a refuse pit, which is like a garbage pit, and over 200 pipes were recovered from the site. I have two of the most decorated ones here to show you, the flower one being one. This pipe is made of a white clay decorated with a 3-band design, including a hand-painted rose motif. So not many 19th century pipes are actually painted. They're like this one, they are often decorated. This one doesn't have any paint, it's just the design. So the floral one that I have here with the rose on it is quite unique in this way, and it is featured on our Google Arts and Culture page, which has a much better picture than unfortunately I'm able to. McDougall, Henderson, Murray, Davidson, or Bannerman. The pipes at this site which had a discernible manufacturer were from the makers and these companies, so we can guess that that's probably who was producing these as well, even though the stem, which had the manufacturer stamped onto it or molded onto it, is broken off. So despite being 80% complete, the stem is not there from this end, so we're not certain who made it. And lastly, for my artifacts here, I have two animal husbandry artifacts, which were both used with horses. I have this harness bell, which actually you can kind of hear it. I'm not going to do it too much because I don't want to break it. Is a harness bell that still jingles. So harness bells were used obviously when driving horses, whether this was plowing fields or transporting goods. Harness bells, however, were usually used only when transporting goods, so you take things into the city, and the harness bells were originally designed as a way to alert people that you were coming, so obviously people would know and move out of the way, hopefully. And they were definitely used in abundance, so it wouldn't be just one harness bell. Like horses, when you would hear them coming for sure. This one specifically has, which is probably going to be almost, you can see it a little bit. So it's got a horseshoe pattern or a horseshoe design. So decorated bells at this time were often referred to as petal bells because they commonly carried a petal design. In this case, it was a petal or horseshoe design. It also has a number stamped into it, which, there we go, it's just right here. You might not be able to see it. You can see the dent, it's just a number 1. And this 1 is probably the size of the bell, so 1 would have been the smaller class of bells. Oftentimes these bells had either the initials of the maker or their size stamped into them. And these types of designs are often from old traditional cast bells from Europe. The last artifact here is a hitching ring. which I'm not going to take out because it's quite, as you can see, it's quite fragmented. So this piece here would have been attached to a wall somewhere, and then this ring was used, so you would tie your lead rope through it, and then it would be used to tie up your horse. Yeah, so I think that is all I have today. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure to check back next time. Tuesday, the Robinson site, I believe. Tuesday at 1 p.m. Thanks again.